This is where I like to start all conversation of blockchain, right? Is asking the question, what do you think you could do if you and all the people who matter to your organization or industry or what have you could operate from a single, immutable, and survivable version of digital truth? Seems obvious to some, less obvious to others. But there are different versions of digital truth that we deal with in our day-to-day life, and we think nothing of it. You buy a stock on E-Trade, and you get that reassuring email back to you that says, you just bought a share of Microsoft. No, you didn't. You just entered into a legally binding contract to buy that share of Microsoft, and you've actually touched off about 3 days' worth of auditing and synchronization and clearing and settlement, all because there are several versions of digital truth going on, even in that mundane transaction. I think about my own personal life in terms of healthcare records. My healthcare records couldn't survive a changeover in doctors occupying the same hospital, the same office, and even the same desk. To say nothing, and that created 2 different digital truths of my health records, to say nothing of any difference between that and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois. Then you have a dead battery. No, then you have my car. You'd think it would be a yes or no answer as to whether or not my car needed recall-related repairs. But the dealership, the manufacturer, and a third-party app all disagreed on that simple yes or no answer. The answer was yes, and I'm still safe. And then finally, I've been a career communicator, for 20 some odd years, and I think about all the different crises that I've worked on, where a single version of digital truth as to, who handled the product and when would have been very nice. So crisis tends to be something that I think about quite a bit when I think about how useful this technology is, and there have been a number of case studies there. But the fact is that the term blockchain seems kind of abstract to people, and a lot of people here, if you've read about it at all, it starts with Bitcoin, the mysterious cryptocurrency that was authored by somebody or a group of somebody's named Satoshi Nakamoto. And all that they wanted to do was get the clicker to work. No, all that they wanted to do was solve the problem with the financial industry is that it relies on trust, right? Can't I create a mechanism that instead of trust in an institution relies on proof? And so what does that involve? You have to ask the question, how do I perform a truly peer-to-peer cash-like digital transaction? How do I make sure that the digital cash cannot be copied or spent, that I can't Control-C and Control-V and just inflate fill coin up until, uselessness? And then finally, how do I do all of this without Citibank, PayPal, or the federal government controlling the currency, keeping the ledger, all that stuff? Really thorny problem. And to solve that problem, they had to solve this problem, the age-old computer problem called the Byzantine generals problem. This was articulated at Stanford Research Institute, home of the computer mouse, second node on the internet. And it asked the question, how do I create a network that I can trust where any one of the nodes on the network might be untrustworthy? So we're going to get a little Game of Thrones here, and we're going to explain blockchain using medieval metaphors. And what we're going to do here is we're going to storm that castle. We're going to storm this castle of 300 people, but we have to coordinate the efforts of 5 generals, each with 100 troops under their command. All right? Now, they all have to attack at the same time, otherwise the troops in the castle are going to completely maul them. So the first guy says, we're going to attack at 9 p.m. He's going to send out a rider. Second general says, 9 p.m., that sounds pretty wild. Sends out a rider. The third general is a traitor. Third general does not want this attack to succeed. He does whatever he does to the march order, kills the messenger, whatever, and he says, no, we're going to attack at 8 p.m. Sends that message along. He has no reason to doubt. What happens to those 2 guys? They're going to attack that castle, and they're going to get completely mauled. That castle is going to join the bad guy general. They're going to attack these guys, and those guys get completely mauled, and we've lost the day, right? So we're going to try that again, but we're going to change the rules of how we coordinate our attack. New rules. Number 1, every rider is going to travel with a master calligrapher. 2, every march order is going to have the previous march order attached to it, okay? And then finally, every march order is going to be so complex that everybody in this group of generals knows that it takes a certain amount of time for a master calligrapher to art up these rather ornate march orders. Whether it's 10 minutes or 5, we don't know. Let's just say 10, just for argument's sake. So we're going to go back to the battlefield. We got our castle, we got our generals. First guy says 9 p.m., sends out his rider with the first marching order. Second writer says, all right, I'm going to attach the next marching order. This guy's got a problem here. He can either try to put a dagger to the messenger's neck or the calligrapher's neck and say, do 30 minutes worth of work in 10 minutes, right? Or be discovered, or engage in rational self-preservation and say, well, okay, damn it, fine, 9 p.m. Sends out his writer, we've got the 4 march orders, now 5, and now we've coordinated the attack and basically routed around the bad general. So this is basically how a blockchain works. So instead of messengers on horseback, participants share the updates to each other on the network. Instead of master calligraphers, we have, to use his term, how he started out, a consensus mechanism or consensus rules of some kind where everybody knows the rules of the game, and some kind of make work has been built into it to economically disincentivize people from defrauding the system. And instead of these interdependent sequential marching orders, what you have are these blocks of data arranged in a chain, and that's how you get the term blockchain. Okay, so how does this achieve immutability? You hear me say this term a lot. So let's say we've got this blockchain, and the end of each block is tied to the beginning of each other block. And let's say we want to unspend a transaction in block number 2 as block number 6 is being authored. Well, same thing. We would have to do 40 minutes worth of work in 10 minutes. Again, I'm just picking 10 minutes in this particular scenario. So you don't have that kind of computing power on your own. You would have to engage in a massive amount of collusion. And so when we say things like immutable or tamper resistant or that sort of thing, that's what we mean. We want to disincentivize the economics of trying to harm or defraud the system. And of course, this is a system that's going to become where the records become more and more secure as more blocks are added to this chain. So for a working definition, let's just say it's an ever-growing distributed list of records that are arrived at and assembled by consensus. Very important. No one person or group owns how data gets written. The data is grouped into blocks that are chained sequentially, that are interdependent, and therefore immutable. So that's going to be our working definition. You got that? Great, because I'm going to click on to the next slide. And as a career communicator, I look at this financial technology like a storytelling technology. Because for now, at least in terms of being a communicator, you can now think of secure narratives. Traditional publishing meant that publishing was secure but not open. Something was published, and then you can't unring the bell if it was broadcast. You can't change the words on the page. But it wasn't an open system because the access to the means of production at scale just weren't available to you. Then you come to social media. It's certainly an open system, but it's not a typically secure one. The one thing that fills my inbox as a PR professional more than anything else are people who don't like their Wikipedia entry. So I feel this acutely day to day. But finally, we have the means to tell a story and create a narrative that is both secure and open. And as a career communicator, that's something that's very, very exciting for me.